Pleased to be joined at this time by Bill Stikes, the current AD at Fayette County High School in Georgia, but former soccer coach, here to talk to us a little bit about fixing a struggling program and what he did with the soccer program. Thanks for joining me, Coach.
Hey, thanks, Coach, for having me. Yes, right. I was before taking over as the AD last couple of years at Fayette County High School. I was the head girls soccer coach in Griffin at Griffin High School for the last 6 years, and took over a program that hadn't had a lot of success, and we started to turn it around a little bit. So I'm glad to talk to you.
Awesome, Coach. Well, excited to hear it because, one thing that's exciting to me about some of these topics we get to talk about is how universal they are. And, me, I was a football coach, but I was the AD, and I worked with every sport. And it became evident to me in my time as an AD how some of these core fundamentals, these 8 or 10 things, these topics that come up in coaching, it really didn't matter if it was boys or girls or what sport you're talking about. Now, we do other one of these, and we're talking about buck sweep, or we're probably talking about something you guys did in soccer defensively or something. Then obviously that pertains to that sport. But in so many of these other topics, it's always intriguing to me that it didn't matter what sport it was. The same stuff was true. And so when we talked about fixing the team, so I want you to talk right now about what all you guys did at Griffin to go from where you were, where you started, to where you were when you ended. Because sometimes when you're at the position you are where you can reflect, that's when you're the most helpful to others, if that makes sense. So others listening to this can really get an idea for this, because hopefully they're taking over a team they're about, and that's why they're watching this. So I put on these 5 things that I thought you should focus on. And the first one was focusing on relationships over everything. So what did you guys do at Griffin to build relationships with players, with parents, with administrators, with coaches of other sports, whatever?
Yeah, and I think relationships are key. Took over 2013. We're coming off a winless season, 0-13. Team had scored 4 goals in 13 games. Got shut out almost every game, took over a program right there. Didn't have a history of success in the girls program. Been a long time since it won a lot of games, and had a lot of athletes that didn't really know what they were doing. Didn't have a lot of knowledge of the game, and so relationship building was key. Really sat down with them at the very beginning and talked to the girls and said, where are we and where do we want to go? Let's be intentional about knowing who we are and where we are. And, one of my first meetings with the seniors, I met with them by class, and one of them said, well, we're not very good at soccer. I said, well, yeah, that's pretty obvious, So how are we going to get better? Is that our goal? And we were, we were transparent with each other. We were honest. They knew my limitations. I knew their limitations. And we were real intentional about planning out something where we all knew what the plan was going to be and how to get there. And I think that transparency with the parents, with the players, with your assistant coaches is real important. Part of it, I think, with relationships, for me at least, was focusing on building capacity in my assistant coaches and really trusting them, making sure, I had a number of assistants that came through, mainly from, football coaches and things like that, picking up second sports, and really focus on building them up too as individuals to make sure they could take over and they could learn and they could lead the team as well. And I think it's being clear with the administration, with your AD, with your principals, where you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it. And also with relationships, it's about recruiting. And I don't mean recruiting out in the community. I mean recruiting the hallways.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
we went a lot of times, talk to the softball coach, talk to the girls basketball coach. Give me your kids that aren't doing anything in the spring, and let's bring them in and get them active. I got a lot of kids that hated track, didn't like running in a circle, but I put a ball out there, and we tried to teach them, a little something, and was real good with developing those positive relationships, which was key to turning it around. I mean, you can't get a brand new group every year. That's one of the things I'm most proud of. We had about 90% retention rate with our players when we brought them in from year to year. About 90% would roll over to the next year. And so we'd bring in a good core group and keep them for 4 years. And so that was built, I think, on that relationship piece, And sometimes that means as a coach looking at them and saying, hey, guys, I screwed this up. Here's what we're going to do to fix it. And it's also about holding them accountable when they kind of, they stray.
Oh, absolutely, Coach. That's the key. And that's the key for boys, girls, football, soccer. It doesn't matter. I'm under the impression that in many sports, kids play sports for many reasons. One's because their parents encourage them to or whatever. But when you get into sports that maybe they didn't play, if you get into lacrosse, if you get into track, if you get into some of these sports where maybe they weren't familiar with it when they were in middle school or when they were a kid, it really is about that person that's running that program. And so if the soccer team is cool, then people want to be on it. And that comes from the coach. And that's why we always say when we talk about these 5 things that this first one is like, most of the deal. If all 5 of these are 100%, that first one's like 80 of it. That if you don't have those relationships with those girls, with those parents, or with those other sports or whatever, it's really this other stuff not as important because it's not going to help you.
That's right.
You kind of got to check that box before you can go to these other things. But so, a key phrase I use all the time when talking about this subject is focus on what you have and not what you don't have. I feel like in my personal experience, that was always really helpful advice that I got, and taking that and ran with it. So what did you, when you got to Griffin, or you're taking over the program and the program had been struggling a little bit, what was something you identified as like, well, at least we have this and we can kind of focus on this and move from there?
That was the key. When we started, had to figure out what we were good at, because we knew we had a low soccer IQ. We didn't know the game well. We didn't have good fundamentals. We didn't have any confidence, and so really that first couple practices, those first couple meetings was identifying what we were good at. We figured out we were athletic. We had a lot of athletes, and I think that's something, you're probably not surprised the school we were at, we had a good number of athletes walking the building. And so we tailored the plan around what we had, which is speed. We had a lot of girls that could run. And so instead of playing, more of a possession base, we kind of shifted that philosophy to a more athletic brand of soccer, where we were taking the ball and getting it forward and letting our girls run and running on the back lines and making the kids, we were playing, making them defend athletes, which, for soccer players, isn't always something they like to do. And so we took what we had, which was girls that could go, and we kind of rebuilt the whole program based off that philosophy. And I think that's the key. Every time you got somebody that's not doing well, everybody's got a strength. Maybe it's the kids are smart, the kids, are always disciplined, and let's focus around that. And with us, it was athletes. And so we shifted our whole philosophy built on the fact of, we're going to have girls that when they get the ball, they can go like lightning towards the goal. And we're going to make somebody make a decision. And, it's going to be a penalty kick. It's going to be a foul, or hopefully we can get a decent shot off. And it was successful for us. And once the kids started seeing that, okay, maybe we don't have, a great first touch. Maybe we don't have a lot of fundamentals. We don't have a lot of history. We do have something we're good at, which is being fast, which is being athletic. And once we identified that, we built on that. Now, how do we build these other skills off our skill set that we already got? And for us, focusing on that meant we built in, little goals during the match. In the game, the final score is obviously what always matters. But when we were building a program, focusing on, how can we magnify that? How can we take our strength and measure it? How many runs do we have against that back line? How many breakaways do we have? How many times can we knock it over the top? And measuring that and trying to grow our skills on those strengths. And, we started small and just kept building on it.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's exactly what we're talking about, is you just, instead of focusing on what you don't have, because what you don't have is still there. So if you were low soccer IQ, you still were low soccer IQ. It doesn't change that. It said focus on it. It didn't say ignore it or just magically zap it or anything like that. But there has to be a focus on, we have to have something good here. Right. And I'll transition into your current role where you're an AD. You've got sports that are succeeding, sports that are not. And my advice to them would be the same thing. If they need to focus on what they do have and just start there and kind of let it grow from that. The next thing is focus on the present, not the past, which I think is kind of common sense. We get this one may be a little more relevant to certain sports over others, but you get these guys coming in and trying to tell you how dumb you used to be and how everything was stupid before they got there. And I just don't think there's any positive to that. If you win, people are going to say that anyway, so good for them. Let them say it. Focus on the present. I mean, I don't know if there's even a question there, but did you see the same thing there, that it was just important to say, let's worry about this?
Well, yeah, for us, that was it. It was just making sure that we weren't worried about, what we had done last year, even last game. It was about making sure every minute mattered. We were on the field and trying to live in the moment. For the girls, it was, let's figure out what we got and how we can get better. We're going to take baby steps. Sometimes we went into matches, we went into matches we knew as a coaching staff, we probably didn't have a prayer to win. It would take some divine intervention. But it's focusing on how we can do to get better and then what we can do to transition to the future. You can wallow in self-pity, or you can think about how awesome everybody was before you, but neither of them matter for the future. And so it's about, making sure the kids are focused too, on what matters now, what's going to matter tomorrow. Not what happened last year, not what happened last week, but what you can do now to make tomorrow better.
Awesome, Coach. Great answer. The next thing we talked about was focus on rules you can enforce. So what was a rule, just may put you on the spot here, but what was something you kind of hung your hat on as from a rule or player procedure standpoint that you thought you put in immediately and it made an impact?
Yeah, and for us, it was the classroom, academics. We wanted to make sure the kids in the building and in the classroom were doing what they were supposed to do. When we kind of took over, what I've seen with a lot of programs like soccer programs that maybe haven't had a lot of success, sometimes they haven't had really, a structured program, haven't had like a handbook or whatever. You got some coaching changes and it's really kind of student-led. And so what we did is made sure the kids were taking care of the business in the classroom. And if you weren't going to do that, you weren't going to participate. And it was something that was important for us when we took over. I mean, our kids had an average GPA of about 2.7. And so by the time, 6 years later, we had a rolling 4-year average of a 3.4. And it was really making sure that one of my core beliefs is that if you're doing what you're supposed to in the classroom, if you're doing what you're supposed to in the hallways and at home, that translates to discipline and success on the field. If I can't trust you in the hallways, I can't trust you on the field. If I can't depend on you in somebody's classroom to do the right thing, to do your work, then for me, I have a hard time trusting you to do the right thing with the ball at your feet. And so it was about kind of getting the kids to buy into that rule that, if a teacher comes and talks to me, we're going to have a problem. And there's going to be some stuff you're going to have to do to take care of that, whether it be extra running, whether it be going to tutoring. But it's about being disciplined in all you do, because I think the field only magnifies what happens in the building.
Awesome. And that's right. I mean, you got to figure that. The next thing, kind of the last thing, is you got to take all this stuff, this your idea, so you got to this job and it was your plan and it was your vision for what you wanted to see Griffin soccer be. And now it's our plan. You got to install it into those parents, into those kids, into the administration, whatever. So what is a way that you were able to transition from your plan into our plan?
Yeah, I think you start with the kids. That's what we did. Start with them and tell them, here's where we think we are. Talking to you, we've talked, and here's where we want to go, and here's how we're going to get there. And just laying it out and being real specific, but also pushing. We instituted an off-season weight training program. I brought the girls in 3 nights a week on the throughout the summer to lift weights and to run and to play. Stuff like that was different. They hadn't really done a lot of, but with an end in mind. Right. And I think that was the key, is that, being honest and being open about here's where we're going to go, here's where we think we can go, and here's why. When we sat down with the kids at first, their goal was like, hey, we'd like to win a game. Well, that ain't a great goal. I want to win more than one game. And so let's identify how we can get to, being successful. And, and we did. It took us a couple of years. Our third year, we won 12 games, went 12-5. But it's about showing the kids, look, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. And it's also about realizing something that we ran into, and I don't know if it's something you've run into, Coach, with your programs. Once we started to get a little bit of success, we honestly started to get more issues than when we had no success.
That's a whole nother one of these, is maintaining the program.
We started to win a couple games, and then suddenly, everybody, thought that the success didn't come with the hard work. We worked real hard. We started to build it, and maintaining it is a whole different animal. And so it's just making sure we kept the plan and we worked the plan and we got buy-in on it.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And you're so right about that. I kind of put in, we're talking about our plan, that last thing, and you think, okay, well, this is a mistake I see a lot of coaches make. They all got a good plan. They all feel good about it until something happens, and then they immediately get their feelings hurt. They immediately shut down. They immediately refuse to change, or they quit. And those are those kind of 4 things you see if you kind of look at them, that, don't get your feelings hurt. Execute your plan regardless of hurdles, meaning, when the principal AD tell you something that's going to, you just kind of execute it anyway. And I think your plan can change.
Absolutely.
I think that's an important thing to understand. You could have walked in an interview and said something like, well, I think the number one thing was this. And then a year later said, no, it was really getting those girls in the classroom. And, it's okay. It can change. It will actually, if you're doing a good job, it will change because you don't know everything. So, right. It's important that you understand that. And I think that's a mistake people make. And then lastly, if they quit, obviously, if you think, and this is the kind of pitch you give at this point where maybe somebody's watching this and they're, it's like their 7th year at a place and they're struggling, they're not taking over a new team struggling. Well, there's no time limit on this. If you give up, then obviously it didn't work out. But if you keep working, it might, you got to keep growing and building that culture and never quit on your plan. So, I just feel like those 4 things are the way where you execute your plan. And when I said all those things, what kind of came to mind for what you guys did at Griffin?
Yeah, I think all of them are real important. I think you're right about not getting your feelings hurt. It's not about you as a coach, and don't take things personally. It's your profession you've chosen. Some people are going to like you, some people aren't. And I think you got to realize that you're there to do a job and to do the best you can with it. With your plan, I think you're exactly right. One of the things that I did wrong, I'll tell you, is especially in that second year, we started to get a little better, and I bit off more than I could chew with the plan. We tried to go too fast and implement too much at one time, and really we kind of built ourselves into this false sense of where we were, and I think when you're working with a program, especially in kind of a non-revenue sport, soccer, lacrosse, sports like that, where, quite frankly, your blue blood programs are going to be great year in and year out because those kids have been doing it since they're 4. And they've been paying $5,000 a year for the last 10 years to get professional training. And you're trying to take kids you're teaching to play and compete against them. It's realizing that, what works at a private school or at one of the public schools that, maybe is more country club sport material doesn't always work where you are. And so to simplify it, we took our plans and really scaled them back and tried to simplify everything to make sure that we didn't leave kids behind. And so I think that was key. One of the things that I changed was, I realized about that third year, the year we actually started to be successful on the field, I realized for us, success wasn't necessarily wins and losses. That mattered and that was important. That's what they put in the newspaper. And winning matters. And I know you know that and I know that. But, for us, we wanted to try to redefine success for the kids, making sure we were competitive on the field, but also, that we made progress every day, that we got better in our key metrics. Our possession was better. Our shot selection was better. Our defensive shape was better each game we moved forward. And then also making sure that we were setting kids up for success. When we talk about programs that, kids aren't going pro in soccer by and large. Right. And so how can we set these kids up for success? Can we get them into school? Can we get them into college? Can we get college paid for? And so for us, that was one of the pivots we made, measuring success, is to start incorporating those metrics, graduation rates and things like that.
Yeah, perfect, Coach. It's obvious you guys had it together, and that's why you were winning. It's tough to fix a team. I agree with the whole long topic. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on, but it's tougher to fix some cases, some of the sports like soccer, because like you said, there's such a divide between the elite team and not. And I know that's true in football and basketball and baseball too, but in my experience as an AD working with all of them, I think it's even further of a gap in golf and tennis and cross country and in soccer and lacrosse, and because they are specialized, and so and there's pockets of areas where kids play those and they're accustomed to playing. It's a huge advantage, even more so than the advantage you see in football, baseball, and basketball. So my hat's off to you for that, and congratulations on moving. You obviously did such a good job. They made you the AD, so that's awesome. I appreciate you joining me on that. That was great, Coach. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Coach.
Yes.